group. Augusta will be presenting on behalf of the team working with Marine Park Alliance.
Hi everyone, my name is Augusta, as Chandler just mentioned, and I'm here to present on our 5-year strategic plan that we've prepared on behalf of Marine Park Alliance. A little bit about our client. Marine Park Alliance is what's known as a Friends of group. That means that they are a nonprofit group that is not affiliated with New York City parks. They typically do things like organize volunteer cleanups and host local community and cultural events. They're entirely volunteer-led. A little bit about the park they serve, Marine Park. Marine Park is located at the southeastern tip of Brooklyn, and it is Brooklyn's largest park, coming in just under 800 acres. And it includes 500 acres of protected forever wildland. It provides tremendous benefits for the local community, from green space, which you just recently learned about many of the values of green space, to air quality benefits, flood resistance, and also recreation and mental health benefits. It's also a critical part of the broader ecosystem near Marine Park, and it's home to over 300 different bird species, 50 different butterfly species, and 100 different fish species. As you might imagine, some of the challenges facing both Marine Park and Marine Park Alliance come around resources. That's both from a funding perspective, but really from an operational perspective as well. A park as large as Marine Park requires a lot of work to maintain, and that's just something that right now is really tight. So I'm going to take this opportunity to just walk you through a little bit on how New York City park funding works. There are two primary sources of funding for the New York City Parks Department. One is from the city operating budget, and the other is from businesses that operate within the parks. So if you go to a park and you buy a pretzel, the vendor that sold you that pretzel is paying a fee to operate there. And that money goes up back to the Parks Department, where it's aggregated and distributed broadly. Now, in 2022, the Parks Department had just over $500 million, and that was to cover operations, maintenance, and capital expenditures across 2,000 parks that they oversee. If you do the math there, it's not spread equally, but if it were, that's about $250,000 a park, so it's not very much money. There is an alternative funding structure that people can pursue, and that's when an organization approaches the City of New York through the Parks Department for a long-term licensing agreement to take over operations and maintenance of the park. And when that happens, they then get to keep the revenue from within the park. So, with that little bit of background, we set the goal for our 5-year strategic plan so that at the end, Marine Park Alliance would have the operational capacity to pursue a long-term license agreement. The reason we chose that is because we feel like that is really the most sustainable way for an organization to secure the funding necessary to both support the community it serves and protect the ecosystems, particularly for Marine Park, which is so large. I will note at this moment, because I'm about to go into our scope, that our scope did not include fundraising strategy or financial analysis. It was really focused on what are the operational changes Marine Park Alliance can enact that will help them attract the resources, recognition, and visitation to Marine Park that will help really bring in institutional funding. Our theory of change there being the more Marine Park Alliance can provide services, the more people that will want to come, the more people that will care about the park, and the more value that will be seen broadly than bringing in resources. So we focused our scope of work around 5 tasks that we thought would be most effective in helping them achieve that. The first was visitors and sentiment. And the idea there is really around data. How many people are coming to the park? What do they want to see in the park? And then also creating a measurement framework that Marine Park Alliance can keep coming back to and checking in on and seeing the impact of their work. The second is stakeholder and community engagement. What are the opportunities and pathways that we can identify for Marine Park Alliance to build relationships with people like community leaders, local electeds, parks officials that will help them again gain that recognition? Programming is already a key part of what Marine Park Alliance is offering to the community. It's a cornerstone of what they do, and it's really successful. They had over 1,000 attendees in the past year at their different events. And so we wanted to lean on that strength as an opportunity to bring more people in. By diversifying and expanding their slate, they can reach and engage more people and bring them into the community. Of course, people need to be able to get to Marine Park to be able to enjoy it, and that's actually a really big problem for Marine Park right now. If you're not within walking or biking distance, or if you don't have a car, it can be very difficult to get to. And finally, for any of this to be effective, Marine Park Alliance really needs the staff and this office space to support that staff. And so we took a broad approach in terms of the way we collected information to help inform the strategic recommendations related to those 5 tasks. The first thing we did was leverage geospatial systems, specifically software called Placer AI, which anonymizes and aggregates cell phone GPS data to help understand things like how many visits are there to a particular area, what are the demographics behind those visits, and where are people coming from. This is really helpful for us in determining who's currently coming to the park, as well as, in terms of where they're coming from, as well as setting benchmarks for future use and kind of where Marine Park Alliance can expect to go. We then conducted a survey, so a 38-question survey hosted online and distributed in physical flyers as well as on digital channels. We got over 2,000 responses. It was really successful from that vantage, and it gave us a ton of information. We unearthed things that people want to learn about the park, types of programming they like to see. It also confirmed some of the challenges that Marine Park Alliance brought to us at the onset of the project. Things like transportation being an issue, how many people are new to the area and that they need to really be able to engage and connect with that new community. And finally, concerns about maintenance given, again, the size of the park and the resources they currently have. We then layered on top of that a more qualitative interview process, where we talked to 9 different experts across the New York City park system, community programming, and community engagement. And this really helped shape some of our strategic recommendations. A few of the things, there were many things, but just a few that we learned, were to unlock efficiencies through partnerships. So there's a great organization, the Jamaica Bay Rockaway Park Conservancy, and they have a great understanding of the the environmental benefits of the area. And so there's a great opportunity there for them to come in and provide educational programming on behalf of Marine Park Alliance, which was one of the most requested things that came through in the survey. It also confirmed how critical it is for Marine Park Alliance to have support from locally elected officials, as well as to hire full-time staff. And finally, it was recommended that Marine Park Alliance pursue a legal agreement with New York City Parks in year 1. This is not the long-term licensing agreement we talked about at the beginning. It's really just a formal relationship between Marine Park Alliance and New York City Parks, again, to kind of help increase grow their relationship and increase visibility about all the amazing work that Marine Park Alliance is doing. Finally, we rounded all of this out with the parks landscape analysis. Understanding what's working in other parks in the area, and just more about the parks ecosystem more broadly in New York City. And this was really valuable in terms of, again, kind of identifying milestones and setting benchmarks for Marine Park Alliance. Of course, we came across challenges. One of the challenges, all data is biased, and we needed to recognize that. Specifically in the survey, because it was hosted online, there's a certain level of opt-in that's required. We think in this instance that that means that people must have been a certain level of engaged with the park and kind of had that level of connection to want to take the survey. That could be a good thing given where Marine Park Alliance is. It makes sure that they're serving their core community. But as they move forward and they want to be engaging more people, it's critical that they identify new opportunities to reach more people. And then the other two really go hand in hand. This is a huge park with tremendous opportunity to create value. How do we make sure that we're honoring that potential while also staying grounded in what's realistic? And as part of that, ensure flexibility. Maybe they don't have the resources we expected in year 2. How can they reprioritize while still kind of marching forward to that overall goal? In the spirit of time, I'm going to be really quick in how I talk about the recommendations, but I promise they'll all be in our final report in detail. Year 1 was really focused about building an infrastructure. So making the hiring moves needed to kind of create that foundation, starting the legal agreement with New York City Parks, securing office space, and initiating some level of transportation in the form of a shuttle bus. Year 2, we thought about programming. How can we get more people invested in the park? Year 3 is where we start to really engage in measurement. We have some benchmarks around visits and program attendees, as well as take a moment to reevaluate what's been working, what's not working, reconduct the survey, and determine what the right next steps. Year 4 is really about actioning everything they learned in year 3. And then year 5, of course, reaching the benchmarks and really we're hoping they'll be in that operational capacity to really be standing on their own. And with that, I will say thank you from our team, and I'll leave you with this wonderful quote from one of our interviews.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. This is a really specific question, but I don't know how many surveys I've walked past on the streets of New York. How did you get 2,000 people to respond to a 38-question survey? Like, seriously, what was the strategy?
That's part of the reason we felt like it was probably from people who really cared about the park. We were also taken aback by how many people responded. Marine Park Alliance has a pretty active social following. They have over 1,000 followers across social media, and they have a 2,000-person email newsletter. And so the survey was distributed a few times through those channels, and then we did do the 700 different door hangers, and we tried to talk to people as we were, hanging those and kind of get them excited. But I think it speaks to how critical Marine Park is for that community and how much they love it.
So Marine Park is really two parks.
Mm-hmm.
There's one on one side of Fillmore Avenue, the other's on the other. This was my neighborhood park when I was a kid. So on one side you have a recreational park, which is ball fields and tennis and pickleball and things like that. And the other is really the ecological one you were talking about. So when you did your strategy, did you differentiate about those essentially two different parks, or did you just consider it one thing?
So we did a lot in terms of trying to understand how the park was being used and where people found value across those. There's quite a bit of, certainly the vast majority of visits to the park are in that kind of recreational area, though bird watching, things like that are very popular on the other side. Given that our goal was overall to attract resources to Marine Park Alliance, which serves the entire park, we really did, broad strokes focus on the whole thing, but that's not to say that we didn't think about, in our specific recommendations, tailor them to different parts of the park.
Thank you. Just a quick question. On your recommendations slide, you had some very specific metrics, like 1.8 million views and 1.5 million or 1,000 visits. How did you come to those specific numbers?
Yeah, so a lot of that was through that comparative parks analysis. So the geospatial data allowed us to use, the place area data allowed us to measure the visits to a bunch of different parks, and we identified parks based on how large they were, the kinds of programming they hosted, their funding structures, where they lived, where a whole bunch of different things. And we identified the ones we felt were most relevant for Marine Park, and then we looked at visitation over time to really help identify what benchmarks were reasonable.